Ivy, you wanted to talk about just different kind of pathways that we could take together in this pregnancy to support you in various ways. Do you have, I know we talked on the phone yesterday, do you have any like more specific questions or things that particular kinds of care that you're interested in or want to hear more about?
I don't know enough yet. I haven't done the research to have very specific questions. Okay. I guess I'm most interested generally in hearing the way you understand risk and if there's like certain, this is Kahir.
Hi there, what's your name?
Kahir.
Kahir, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. I was just making some lunch.
Perfect. No, it's fine. Life is how I understand risk. That's a great, amazing question.
I don't know. What feels ideal for you thinking about someone with a value system of more natural, earth-based, where your like risk assessments might fall? And that's
we can start there and just riff from there. Two separate things, my understanding of like what is risk, my perspective on that, and then working with a naturally minded, earth-based client, like how does that shape the relationship? For me, I feel like we're always trading risks in life. Mm-hmm. There is no risk-free option when we're alive. There is nothing that we do that is without risk. We are always, whether we think about it or not thinking about it, we are always choosing one set of risks instead of another. Anytime we say yes to one thing and no to another, we're choosing a certain set of risks. Mm-hmm. In pregnancy and birth. And I feel like, especially in those crucial moments of birth, right? I think that's where people often are focused on when they're thinking about risk. The hospital experience comes with a certain set of risks, and the home birth experience comes with another particular set of risks. And then there's also another option, right? Hospital, home with a midwife, and then there's the unassisted birth set of risks. And in the hospital, the set of risks you're often dealing with is the medicalization, shortage on time, and also you're dealing with more of a risk of intervention in general, whether that's pain meds, because the perception of pain is so different when we're out of our the sanctuary of our homes. We're dealing with that risk, and also just interventions, more vaginal exams, like less mobility, more drugs in general, which then can cascade into other risks such as cesarean surgery and all kinds of stuff. But I feel like that's what people see the most in terms of hospital risk. That's kind of a really general, quick bullet point version of hospital risk. Home birth risk in general, whether you have an attendant or not, is you're going to have way less risk of depending on your attendant. But if it's with me or like my midwife, you're going to have way less intervention in general, right? There's just not the level of pharmaceuticals or surgery. Like those things aren't available at home. We're not trying to coerce anyone into doing hard drugs or surgery during labor because we don't offer those things. The risk that you're taking at home is really if there is that very urgent, life-threatening emergency, there's a certain distance from the operating room. And those kinds of emergencies are like a cord prolapse or an uncontrollable hemorrhage, which usually would be really rare at home because we have herbs and medications and manual techniques to help stop that before we need to go anywhere. Like seizures, like things that are really uncommon and rare, but require like urgent within 5 minutes, 15 minutes surgery. You don't have access to that at home. So that's the risk of being at home in general. And the farther you are from the hospital, the more that is real. Mm-hmm. And those things are really rare. And then with unassisted birth, you have all those same risks of postpartum bleeding is one of the main things that it's not that uncommon to bleed a bit after birth, or to bleed like more than is really, to bleed enough that it taxes your postpartum recovery, essentially. Like maybe you can handle it, but it'd be nice if if it stopped earlier. And those sorts of things, without an attendant there, you just don't have that kind of middle way of having somebody that can kind of bring things back to normal, bring things back to balance in a gentle way. But you also have even less disruption in your birthing process. It's kind of a spectrum. That's for me, we're trading risks always. And for me, client autonomy is number one. And I just love everybody to know that as a client, as a human being in the medical system or any system, like you can decline anything. Like that is your right. With the midwife or at the hospital, if you want an undisturbed birth, but you want a midwife there at some point, you can decline. You can refuse to let me in at a certain point, or you can say, no, thank you. I don't want you to listen to the baby for another 2 hours. Me and my partner are going to enjoy some privacy and really get into the trance of labor together to facilitate birth. And we really feel like even just listening to the baby for the next 2 hours would take us out of that. See you in 2 hours. Those sorts of things, like it's in your hands. Or if you didn't want me to do life-saving measures, for example, like that, we usually have to talk about that beforehand because we're not in a position in the moment to really have that discussion. But for me, it's really it's like your autonomy as a human being and a family and a birthing person. It's number one for me. It's not about me doing my program and you happen to fit into it. Does that help? Does that answer any part of your question?
No, that's wonderful. I appreciate that. I've been hearing stories from friends and listening to a lot of stories, and that is not so common, it seems, in the birth world. But I was just saying, that's how the autonomy piece is central to our worldview also, and that's not extraordinarily common.
It takes a certain orientation and I think a certain level of having really confronted death, just to be blunt, to really be able to say like, yeah, I fully understand my responsibility here. And also like, what's not my responsibility, right? What we can control really as human beings is so limited. We can all do our best and tragedy can still happen. I think also just like having that worldview and that there is something larger that's really participating with us, that we don't have any control over that part of the mystery. We can cultivate certain possibilities, right? And certain outcomes we can cultivate and lay the ground for those things. But then the world is always happening to us and conspiring with us. And sometimes that might feel like it's conspiring against us. But that's just life, no matter what the context is. Anyway, it sounds like you all have maybe stepped along some of those paths.
For sure. What I'm feeling with a potential unassisted birth, I guess they're just learning from you I guess I'll go back to pregnancy to start chronologically. Sure. I would love to hear like the tiers of medical, like the total hospital OBGYN is like a no, that's like a hard no. That is off the table for us, so I don't even feel like we need to talk about it, but like,
will you say a little bit of why that's off the table for you?
I don't like hospitals. I don't like that model of care. I have a lot of distrust of them. I don't, their approach to autonomy and risk is not aligned with mine. And I also, I was raised in a very scientific family that appreciates the medical system. It's not like a hard line, or I know some people who are in our circles who are so programmed to never go there. And I don't feel that way. I have a sense of what they offer. And basically, and it's not like we'll never go to a hospital if we feel like we need to go to a hospital. But it's more like I don't want to start walking that path unless there's very good reason to. Approaching this that's our default is to not go to a hospital unless there's good reason to. And then with the midwives, I understand they can be almost as medicalized in the risk assessment and autonomy questions because they're trained. They're like are trained in the medical tradition, and for the most part,
it depends on the midwife and their training. I would say certified nurse midwives for sure are trained as nurses and do their residencies at hospitals, even though some programs do offer a home birth stint, but it's usually pretty minimal in their training. Licensed midwives, it varies. It is becoming more academic and more medicalized, but there still are some more traditional community-based midwifery programs out there, just for clarity on that. Cool. There's this kind of a spectrum.
During pregnancy, I know there's a lot of testing that would be standard, and I don't really fully know what that would be, but I would love your take on the different types of tiers of testing. And like, for the record, our default would be to do nothing, but I don't want to like go into that uninformed. And I do have a lot of respect for the scientific method, so I don't want to like.
I think, and it may not surprise you that I get this question somewhat frequently from the kinds of clients that I attract. And I think for me, like right now, the place that I'm at is it's really nice if you do transfer care at any point to at least have the initial lab work done in pregnancy, which is, and what is that? It's kind of a bunch of different panels. And that's like HIV testing, like a lot of STD testing, and like, do you have antibodies for rubella? Do you have syphilis? Those sorts of things. And then also a complete blood count. So what your red blood cells look like, what your hemoglobin looks like, white blood cells, kind of inflammation stuff, platelets for clotting. Those things feel more just like it's good to know clinically what your vulnerabilities might be. It's also nice. I think that information is more useful to me in terms of guiding someone into nutrition and really like what to be focusing on to nourish mom's body while she's nourishing baby. And then a lot of folks will do vitamin D testing, which there's a lot of research behind vitamin D. And because it is kind of a hormone facilitator, low levels of vitamin D are correlated with more cesareans. I think it's great in general. Also at latitude 48 here, where we don't get a lot of sunshine, to just see where people are starting with their vitamin D levels, to bring those up to a robust place, I think is a great idea in general in life. And then what else? Ferritin is iron storage. So seeing like, what are your iron stores? And that's important as you half again your blood volume in pregnancy, that you have that iron to create the hemoglobin so that there's adequate, ample oxygen circulating through your own body and also nourishing baby's body. And what else? Thyroid is another thing, because thyroid is basically controls growth along with temperature. But if thyroid levels are optimal, it affects baby's position. More babies go head down with a healthy thyroid. More breaches are associated with hypothyroidism, which is fine. I love breech babies. They come out either way. But when it's because of a thyroid imbalance, then I think we should nourish the thyroid. Let's see. This is like, I'm giving you the full extended initial prenatal panel right now, which if somebody wants to geek out on that initial labs and just make sure that all the systems are being nourished appropriately, if there's weaknesses in any places, and also just everything looks good. And at that point, if somebody didn't want to do any more testing, if you didn't want to do any more labs, I think we could just go on clinical signs, essentially. If you're feeling really tired and worn out and have crazy bags under your eyes, third trimester, it might be like, maybe we should look at your iron again, or look into something, or try just nourishing you in a different way. That's like that for me. And if you didn't want to do all of those, that would be fine. I'm just saying these are all the labs that I might do at an initial lab draw, so that we get an overview of like basically your nutrients and your health in like a holistic, from a lab perspective way. And then we can have some information to be really individualized in your diet and supplementation, essentially. If you didn't want to do any of those, I think it would still be, it wouldn't be a deal breaker necessarily. There would just be things that we didn't know. Part of that initial panel for, I think, for the health, like the attendant, is also like, does this person, like, do I need to wear protective equipment? Does this person have hepatitis B? That kind of thing. It's at that level where those initial labs are also to protect the person who's working with you, because there will be fluids that are contacted. That's my spiel on the initial labs. And I have some people who just do a really minimal or don't, and we just talk over things really thoroughly. I think you asked specifically about labs. Is that right?
Yes.
And there's like, in a normal, in like a standard care, you would have those initial labs, and then you'd have the 25 to 28 week to 30 week labs. And then you might have another check-in at 36 weeks to make sure that your iron's good, essentially. That would be the standard. The one that I feel the most passionate about is the first one. But also, if we don't know, then we go with the information that we have. And most people do fine no matter what their labs say. But it gives us some more information. As far as ultrasounds, I have no strong feelings about that. I think it's better not to do any ultrasounds in the first trimester, when literally the the cells are figuring out if they're going to be a liver or a heart or skin. I think it's best not to introduce strong vibration into that situation that can move things in ways that they wouldn't naturally move. I think once those foundations are laid, it's a little bit less risky, but I don't need anybody to do any ultrasounds at any point unless there was some real strong indication for it. Somebody started bleeding at 14 weeks, and we might think maybe there's a placenta previa or something odd. Mm-hmm. That would be a reason to recommend it. But then you just also know some people want to get an ultrasound at some point just to know, like, 10 fingers, 10 toes, or be prepared if there's a heart issue or whatever it is. Other people are more comfortable with just letting what's in the mystery, in the dark, stay in the dark until it emerges into form. I personally am into that. I didn't get ultrasounds with either of my kiddos, so that's where I'm at personally with it. I think that kind of covers labs. We could talk about gestational diabetes tests, but I really, you can easily refuse that if you want. And we just kind of talk about if there's any risk factors. And the same thing with the group B strep, which is a vaginal swab at the end of pregnancy to see if there's a particular kind of bacteria inhabiting the vagina, which can, in very few cases, cause a respiratory distress that can be really serious and life-threatening for babies, but it's very rare.
Those would be the two big ones that would be tested for. The
GDM and BS. Those are also like the easiest to refuse. But in medical care, it's just, I don't know how easy they are to refuse if you're in a hospital situation, but most midwives are pretty flexible about those. They have limited value, really.
Awesome. And then I wanted to ask about supplements. You mentioned supplements. People keep telling me I should be taking supplements. And I feel like unless you have a very specific awareness of deficiency, it feels like you can do more harm with supplements sometimes. I would say
sometimes that's true. Was there more to your question before I respond?
Not really. I also wanted,
Not really. Okay.
I did do an HTMA test, and I don't know if you have experience with
what is that?
Oh, it's a hair tissue mineral analysis.
Oh, cool.
You send in pieces of your hair towards the base, and they can give you a pretty crude picture of mineral levels, but it can be helpful to see if there's heavy metals. And people know how to interpret them, and we didn't actually there's a consultation that would have actually helped interpret those results that we didn't do. But yeah, it showed, it was like, I can send it to you if you're curious. I don't know. It's interesting.
Sure.
Anyways, I've just heard, especially with the mineral stuff, like you can just like random supplementation can be not helpful. So.
Well, I think it depends on the kind of supplement. Like anything that's water soluble, you're just going to pee out if you have too much of it. It's hard to really cause harm with reasonable amounts of that. It may be unnecessary, but it's usually not harmful. Fat soluble vitamins like vitamin K or A or D, you can get too much of those, and they can be toxic. If you're taking all three of them together, they tend to work synergistically and be less toxic, and can be really important for hormone function. And what else? Minerals, right? Minerals are supposed to be trace minerals often, except for, I don't know, it probably depends on your lens, but iron could be considered a mineral, which we generally need in higher quantities. And I like to think of it in the ratios of minerals found in the earth, and iron is found in the earth in really high quantities. And so it's also in our bodies in really high quantities. That just makes sense. Whereas copper, for example, is more scarce on the earth, and it should be more scarce in our bodies. It's a potent but a trace mineral. Same with something like selenium. Selenium is interesting because, right, a lot of our soils are depleted of selenium unless you're supplementing or growing your own food in selenium-rich soil. You might not be getting enough. It's complex. It's nuanced with supplementation, and that's one reason I like to do the labs at the beginning, is so that we know, oh yeah, this person really does need iron, or like, wow, whatever you're doing is really working great. So just keep doing that and make sure that you're getting enough nutrient dense food to grow a baby and keep your bones strong, and your blood strong. Did I answer your question, or how does that?
I guess I'm curious. The B complex stuff I've been hearing about. I don't know what your take is on the B complex. My mom's been harping on it.
It's one of those. B vitamins and C they're going to come out in your pee if you have too much. So it's hard to be harm. You can't really harm yourself with them. If you take a lot of B12, you might feel pretty amped. You might get like flushed for a little while, but you'd have to take a lot unless you're particularly sensitive to it. I think one of the main ones people are thinking about is folate when they're talking about B vitamins in early pregnancy. And it is a crucial nutrient when those embryonic or even like pre-embryonic tissues are folding and creating the spine. If there's not enough folate in the system, that spinal fold won't fully close. That's why folate is really important in early pregnancy. Folate sounds a lot like foliage, and you get a lot of folate from dark green leafy vegetables, and also from eggs, actually. So people who are eating a lot of folate-rich foods are gonna have enough of that.
Great.
Does that answer the question?
Those are foods I have actually been tolerating, so that's great.
Great. Your body is wise. She knows she needs those to grow a baby.
And so I guess that my other main question is like about the nausea I've been feeling, and I've definitely not been getting 2,000 calories every day. And like the past 2 days, especially yesterday, I like threw up my big lunch meal, and then I could only really snack on foods. And I'm not feeling
exactly. How many weeks are you along now?
Just so I can have almost to 9 weeks. Somewhere between 8 and peak. Would be peak.
One of the most counterintuitive things when you're feeling nauseous in early pregnancy is to eat more frequently. not eating actually exacerbates the nausea, because part of it is a blood sugar issue. And you may already be doing this, but eating every 2 hours throughout the day is crucial, and not sugary foods, which would include like fruit or like some simple highly processed grains that are going to go through your system fast. You want every 2 hours to have something fatty and protein rich, so that it kind of keeps your blood sugar pretty much cruising around that stable line. If you eat sugary food, it's going to spike up and then drop down when the insulin metabolizes it, and then you're going to feel nauseous again. And it can be like this really gnarly cycle. Eating kind of constantly, nuts, yogurt, eggs, avocados, sardines, if you can handle them, fleshy foods, that kind of stuff can be really helpful.
Cool. I guess body, the volume, I'm like consistently snacking throughout the day, but I'm still, what my body is wanting me to consume is such a low volume at any given bite. It's just really hard to get any kind of volume in, even if I can like hold still with the nausea, and it feels bad to like force myself to eat. I guess that's probably what it comes down to. Is I'm curious how it's kind of how much I should push myself.
It's a weird part in pregnancy where really food is medicine, and it's the grossest thing ever. Yes, I would experiment with pushing yourself for a day or two to really eat maybe 300 calories every couple hours, or at least 150. Like 150 is maybe like a bar, your standard bar, or what would that be? A couple eggs, maybe something like that every couple hours, and see how you feel. The other thing that you can do to help, because part of it's the blood sugar, and the other part that's really the catalyst is for the nausea is the pregnancy hormones. You can help metabolize those hormones more efficiently if you're active, which can also be really, really hard because you feel like you're going to vomit and you're so tired all the time. And then eating and moving are actually the things that help you feel not awful. It can be kind of a slog. It's, maybe you could think of it in a developmental, like psycho-spiritual way. As this is the first opportunity to build capacity as a parent. You really are building capacity for discomfort. These are the exact opposite things of what I would really want to do right now, but actually they can be the most helpful. So I would recommend just experimenting with them, with eating every 2 hours something fatty and or proteiny, and also going on a walk in fresh air, maybe after you eat them or while you're eating them. It can really help. The fresh air and the walking seems to really help people. It's rough. You've got, hopefully, if you're on the normal, usual way, you've got like 3 or 4 more weeks of this, and then you'll start to feel better. And
fingers crossed.
Could be where you can actually like do things. And
that's great. I needed a pep talk. Get myself there.
Because if you don't eat and you don't move, you'll just end up lying down and feeling awful all the time.
Awesome. That's my pep talk. Okay, you heard it. I heard it.
Buckle up, Ivy.
Yeah.
Awesome. But also napping. Not to say you can't. You also need to nap. It's like nap, eat, walk, repeat. Don't expect too much of yourself beyond this amazing thing that you're doing of holding space for a human being to be formed inside your body. It's really big work, and it's very subtle. What else do you all have for me?
Those were my immediate short-term things before we see you in person that I think of.
Do you want me to articulate a little bit about the different ways that I can come alongside you throughout your pregnancy?
Yes.
Or you feel like you got that?
I have a sense, and I have a developing sense of what I think we would appreciate. But
okay. I'll just give you the brief overview. Most level of care, right? Most comprehensive would be just like full midwifery care, global care. Essentially, you come into care, we do the usual things, including you can decline what you want to decline. But we're on that track. We do prenatal appointments to some degree. And I attend your birth if I make it, if you let me in the door. And then do immediate postpartum care for you and baby. If baby would need any help after birth, I provide that. Generally, I would have an assistant with me who usually comes just at the end of labor. So she's there for when baby comes out and there might be two people needing care at the same time. Other than that, she usually just takes notes and helps clean up afterwards and make sure the family's tucked in and fed. And then postpartum care, all of the things, help with breastfeeding, pelvic floor support, helping with the abdominal muscles, assessing those and helping bring those back together. Just a lot of comprehensive nurturing and offering all of the medical things for mom and baby. Fine if you don't want to do any of them. I do a birth certificate, right? That's like automatic birth certificate and social security number. Again, you don't have to have a social security number for the kid, for your baby, but you can, and that's easy if you have a midwife.
How hard is it if you don't have a midwife? That's another question. It's later on, but I do want to know that information.
It's still doable. You just file the birth certificate independently. I don't know in Washington State, honestly, if like you need a witness. Usually you need a witness. That can be dad if nobody else is there, basically witnessing that you indeed had this baby that you're saying is yours.
Cool. And what is like the price? What are you talking price wise for that whole package? Get it?
Currently that whole package is $6,800, which feels expensive and also so cheap compared to medical care.
Totally.
It just depends on insurance and health.
And I guess I'm imagining a lot of that is you needing to be on call for like weeks at a time. Or like, I hope that's a lot of it, because that's
totally being on. I so appreciate that you recognize that is an immense thing. Going on a hike in the woods is no longer a simple matter, or boating on the river if somebody is in their birthing moon window. That's part of it. The other part is it's a global fee, because people might feel like, oh, I'm not going to need anything, but then maybe they end up really needing a lot of care, and we just don't know. So it's just a flat fee that includes basically whatever that individual needs and the diet of mom baby needs throughout that time. Any other questions about that track?
I guess how many appointments in general would that be?
Like the standard is generally people end up coming to about 12 appointments. There's also like a low risk appointment schedule that for some reason standard care hasn't recognized, even though it's been there for decades, I believe. That's much more spread out, that I feel very comfortable with. I've offered that since the beginning of my practice. And then there's also, you can come into care whenever you want, and you can decline the standard prenatal schedule and create your own. And we just do that. There's also the option of doing a hybrid thing of, we see each other in person, right? Especially for people who are at a bit of a distance. And then we do telehealth appointments in between, which that was studied during COVID and with no changes in outcomes. Every mom and babies did fine with less prenatal appointments, which is reasonable. Most of the time, we're just making sure that everything looks good. And there's not necessarily that much we can do about some things anyway. And I create like a little kit for people so they can listen to baby at home and take their blood pressure and do a urine dipstick and that sort of thing. So we can do kind of like a full prenatal at a distance as well, which a lot of people like if they live a long ways away and don't want to spend the time or the money driving for appointments that are just really, we're just checking in to make sure everybody's good and to answer questions and like prepare for birth. A lot of that is just conversation. And that's the prenatal visit scene. And then generally postpartum, I would come between 24 and 48 hours. And then it's kind of optional after that. Even that would be optional if you didn't want it. But first-time mamas often benefit from some support around 3 to 5 days when the milk is coming in. And then there's often an appointment at a week. And that could just be a phone call or it could be in person. And then I generally see people around 2 to 3 weeks. And this is both, these are for mom and baby. And then in Washington state, technically babies are out of our care at the 2-week mark. But in practice as midwives, we're still caring for babies. We just, insurance doesn't recognize it. We don't get paid for that specifically. And then there's the final appointment at the 6 to 8 week mark. So that's kind of the standard schedule. It can vary quite a bit depending on what people need and want.
Cool. That's good to know. That's a lot. I guess you could talk about the other spectrum.
Sure. Yeah. That's full. That's like the full midwifery care. And then there's just consults. If you wanted to do individual consults with me throughout pregnancy, you can also do that. Some people choose to do that. They are planning on birthing unassisted or aren't sure what they want, but they just want to come in and have a consult with a midwife and maybe get some labs done. They decide, I actually want to do some labs, or they want somebody to listen to the baby or measure their fundal height or feel how much fluid they have to see if it seems normal, or ask questions about how to prepare for birth, or just have a consult, like a one-off appointment. Some people do that. And then you just pick your own whenever you feel ready for that. You don't have to commit to anything up front. And then if you wanted more care, you can always do that later. And I guess unless I've planned some wonderful travels, and then I wouldn't be available, but somebody else might be. That's that. And then there's kind of the totally not medical, just like birth coaching aspect, which doesn't do any of the medical stuff. We're just like, let's say you wanted to do birth coaching to prepare on all the levels for an unassisted birth at home. And we like take care of we address the practical levels, and maybe we do some body work and some deep imaginal work, cultivate your sanctuary space and your connection with your deep wisdom and your baby. You're working together during labor, cultivating that relationship, and also just filling in any gaps that you have, and helping you prepare for to go on a journey through a place that you've never been on your own, versus like having the guide go with you. It's just like, we're going to prepare in all of the ways for this journey. Even one level over here would be like, you come and get some massages and to help your body just be in alignment and everything balance out structure and make lovely space for the uterus and the baby to get into optimal position to help labor flow. That might be like the lowest, least comprehensive version. And then there's the like, you don't come see me at all, but you call me when you start feeling crampy and you're like, hey, do you want to come to a birth? Do you want to come sit down the road from us for a little while? There's also like, that does happen in the world of unassisted birthing for sure. And I guess it would be like having somebody, it can put me in an awkward position in some ways, but also having somebody there, even without any prenatal anything, is probably better than having no one there. Especially if you were to feel like you needed something. Or sometimes an unassisted birther will call after the baby comes out and be like, I don't know how to get this placenta out. It's not coming out. Can you come help? That kind of thing. happens from time to time.
Well, wow, bless you for being down with the range. That's like just someone with the awareness and flexibility to be willing to take on that full spectrum is really, that feels like such a blessing to us. I think ultimately we're going to be playing it by ear a little bit, but I'm really excited about the body work and potentially a blood panel. And you do the blood draw, right?
I draw those labs unless I just poked somebody 3 times the other day and was like, nothing's happening here. Like, you have to go into I'll write an order so you can go into the lab, but that's pretty rare. Usually I do the blood draws myself.
I know if I went to like my primary care, I could get insurance to cover that.
Mm-hmm.
And probably
your insurance will cover the labs.
Cool.
I don't charge like for drawing the labs. Essentially, like I would charge for an appointment, but there's no like lab draw fee in particular. That's the only thing you come in for, and then it would be probably like $25 or $30. But yeah, I just draw the labs, and then the lab charges your insurance, and I just put the fancy codes on there in hopes that you will get as much covered as possible. If you have Melina, they are great at covering most everything. Sometimes they won't cover vitamin D because everyone's deficient. So for some reason, insurance won't cover it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of rude. But other than that, everything gets covered.
Awesome. I think right now I have like coordinated care selected, but that was a very arbitrary decision. I assume it's easy. It's easy if you to change over.
It might be easy to switch over. Cool. Yep. And I do have a relationship with a biller who often helps people switch over. If you wanted to get in touch with her, that's what she does. If it's tricky for you.
Well, I'm just excited to have a knowledgeable, wise person to just be in touch with. That just alone feels huge. And then the birth does sound really amazing. And I am planning on taking this online class, and we'll see how much, if when we're done with that, we still feel the need. But I imagine like an in-person journey type preparation would be awesome. I've been doing a bit of like shamanic training work, and that's been amazing. And I'm imagining that's probably helpful, but
totally helpful. Who are you doing that training through?
It's through Dreaming Awake. I don't know. Okay. They're out of the UK.
Heard of
Amanda Scott. She wrote the Boudica
Amanda
book.
Scott.
Amanda Scott.
This is all very familiar to me. I feel like I might know this Amanda, but I'm terrible with names.
She has a podcast called Accidental Gods. She's like a British woman. She's great.
She's just a British.
She's a British gal.
She's a British woman. What else do you need to say?
What else do you need to know?
I'll look her up. I'm wondering if I've heard of her, or maybe actually I might. I don't know. Probably not the same person, but sounds cool. What a lovely name of an organization, at least.
I'm interested more broadly as birth as like rite of passage.
Totally.
And like in general, how to cultivate that for communities. That's just awesome. It's just great.
It's in there somewhere.
I really like, one of my favorite things that I do is this inner wild sanctuary work with women during pregnancy for birth preparation, and even in between births, it happens actually at all stages of life, but I love it for birth preparation. Just we go into these worlds, like the inner wild sanctuary for each woman is so different, and there's just so much support available in that imaginal realm, that embodied imaginal realm. So much support available for everything from like laying down fears to receiving wisdom and birth guides to these are the positions in labor that are going to be important to you. That like all sorts of things come through. But it's really seems to be really fortifying for women as they're preparing for birth, because so much of labor is that deep trance place And if you can really be in your inner wild sanctuary during that time, it just really, it facilitates birth. It just facilitates the journey to be also in that world while in this ISO world at the same time. It's like in the most lame way of saying it is it's a great coping it's a great coping tool, but in the most transformative, deeper sense, it really creates a ground for transformation, right? Like you're talking about rite of passage. It's a place where that rite of passage is occurring also. In addition to it occurring in the flesh, it's the imaginal aspect of that, and it really enriches that experience, which I would say is not only a rite of passage, but also can be an initiatory experience, which is slightly different with the right preparation. Sometimes not even with the preparation, but with robust preparation, you have just more capacity to be present in that space during that portal time of birth.
That's so awesome.
Any other question? All right. Well, blessings, you all, and I'm rooting for you on the 2-day eating and moving challenge. See how that experiment unfolds, and I'll see you in June.
Awesome.
And if you have any really pressing questions before that, feel free to reach out. I'm traveling for 3 weeks in May, so I won't be super available, but feel free to ask the questions, and I'll get to them when I can.
Sounds great. Yeah, and feel free to ignore me. It doesn't seem if you're having a great time, and it doesn't seem
if I come across it and I can answer it, I'll probably just answer it. But yeah, sometimes my phone won't be on, or I'll be out of range backpacking, so I just won't answer anything because I won't be getting anything.
We'll have a good time. Have a great
trip. Thank you. And you'll probably be feeling less nauseous by the time we see each other again.
Yeah, let's pray for that.
You won't get barked on.
Yeah. All right. Bye,
All right.
guys.
Have a
Thanks,
good one.
Christina.
Bye.